All right, so joining us on the podcast today is Andrea Lo, Director of Client Solutions at Flipp. Really excited to have you on today. There's a couple of topics we definitely want to dive into, but before we get started, just wanted to open it up to you and tell a little bit more about Flipp, the teams that you manage over there. And I know that you have a lot of experience at Flipp, so what your journey has looked like over there.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. But yeah, I'll kick it off. So, Flipp, we are a retail technology company. We work with some of the largest retailers and brands across North America. So, think Walmart, Kroger, P&G, Unilever. And we're really gold on connecting them with millions of different shoppers across our platform on a week to week basis. So, the easiest way to think about it is if you're imagining a traditional flyer experience, we're really reinventing that weekly ad in digital to help our consumers plan where to buy and what to buy. And then we're distributing a lot of these experiences across multiple channels, reaching over 100 million users in North America. And most importantly, we have a lot of data. So it's all around leveraging these insights to help our partners plan and make better marketing and merchandising decisions. As you mentioned, I head up our client solutions function at Flipp. I've been here for over 10 years and I oversee a team of our sales engineers, customer success, technical account managers, and our media and ad ops teams. So essentially, all the external experts and specialists who are helping our customers, whether it's around driving content, technology, or media outcomes. And like you mentioned, I've spent over a decade at really this crossroads between tech, retail, and content, and just very passionate about building bridges around connecting big picture strategy to our real customer.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just so I can understand a little bit better, I guess on the retail side, has it always been digital or have you guys always had a digital product that you offer? Or was it more so on the traditional sending by like mail side maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, great question. So always been focused on digital. And I think that was really the genesis of Flipp was taking this archaic traditional marketing and media and then how do we win in the digital space? And so that's really where the business started many years ago.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you, when you started at Flipp, were you always on the client solution side or did you work into that role?
Had a journey and worked into that role. So I actually started out my career in more of the operations side, dipped my toes in some of the product side, and really now owning at the intersect between our product and sales functions. And that's really the strategic pillar of client solutions today.
That's great. And I guess to dive into some of the questions that we wanted to talk about today, just around customer expectations and how they're really changing just recently. In this past year, is there anything on your side that would have sounded maybe unrealistic for a customer expectation, but now is just common? And how are you guys adapting to that?
I think one of the biggest changes that we've seen, and I don't think it's new to anyone, is really around customers expect businesses not just to know them, but really around anticipating their context and intent in real time. So I'd say 1 or 2 years ago, real time adaptative experiences were mostly still buzzwords or limited to big tech. But now every company is expected to really meet the customers where they are. We're expected to personalize everything, whether it's pricing, service interactions, leveraging micro signals like social media trends, language cues. And we're really adapting at Flipp by investing in streamlining data and AI models to help us predict this intent. We don't want to just react to it. It's no longer enough to just segment customers based on where they live, their income. It's really around how do we model these moments. And I think that's been a very big deep from how personalization and intent has worked.
That's fairly unique to Flipp, or do you think have you been seeing that from like peers that you've talked to across the board?
I don't think it's unique to Flipp. I do think it's very broad, and I think this is happening across multiple different industries. It could be tech, it could be media, it could be agencies. I think every business is expected to, again, meet our customers where they are, and that's really how we're gonna win.
What is a customer experience, maybe mindset or a philosophy that you have that's helped you early in your career, but now maybe holds teams back if it's not covered?
Great question. I think early in my career, you always hear this notion of the customer is always right. You learn to listen deeply, you try to fix their problems very quickly. But I think this mindset taken too far leads to these unsustainable practices or this idea of customization overload, especially in tech. And so while I strongly believe the customer deserves to be understood, we can't always give them everything they're asking for. Being a trusted advisor, being a great CSM is about balancing the customer need while understanding what is the actual outcome? What is the purpose? How do we scale and setting those healthy boundaries? So that's the shift between serving every request to really shaping the right experiences.
And just in terms of AI, obviously, it sounds like you guys have been doing some things over there to implement and get your team more integrated with AI tools. How are you right now empowering your team to become AI trainers and not just users of AI as automation and AI becomes a bigger part of customer experience?
I think it's really the biggest piece is around a mindset shift around AI isn't just this black box we use, right? We have to shape and we have to train it so that we're leveraging it as an enabler. And so I think I see it in a couple of different ways. The first is around contextual expertise, right? We have to encourage our CS teams to contribute by leveraging real world examples, edge cases that AI alone can't predict or just guess. And because our CSMs are closest to the customers, they're very uniquely positioned to help train some of those models. I think the second big piece is around like feedback loops. We have to set up processes where our teams can easily flag any responses that may be off brand or inaccurate. And so instead of treating these errors as failures, we have to leverage them as valuable training data. And I think the last piece is all around co-creation sessions, right? War rooms, workshops. How do we let our team members help build and test AI, whether it's writing the actual scripts, refining any intents, developing any escalation paths? It's really about empowering them to, again, leverage it as a strategic enabler versus this black box that we're just using as a tool.
Definitely. And I know that as AI evolves, there's these two different segments. It's like the, I guess, part that everybody knows right now, which is more on like the LLM side of ChatGPT or Claude or other big LLMs like that. But aside from that, the other side is maybe like agentic AI and building out AI agents on your team to almost sometimes act as employees of just redundant work. Are you guys doing anything on that side? I know that you mentioned some of the CSMs kind of training them to interact or help build out some of those models. Are you guys building anything like that right now?
Yeah, I think agentic AI is a very exciting development and very relevant for us. At our organization, we actually see huge potential for the agents, not just to analyze campaign data, but really suggest what we call new promotions. So you think about our app, if you think about even our consumer experience, it's how do we actually leverage agentic AI to help our consumers shop faster? So think about the ability to just build a grocery list based on these items that I want to purchase, chicken breast and broccoli. Help me build a whole entire recipe and then automatically, based on what the preference of our consumers is, that is what is helping to drive retention. And the reason that's important is because for our CSMs, they can actually leverage this predictive analysis and these insights to help our partners grow. And that's where we see the strategic value of agentic AI. It's to your point, not just about this repetitive task being automated, but then how do we strategically leverage that to I'll circle back to CSMs, looking at retention, looking at growth, looking at how do we upsell and cross sell to a lot of our clients and our customers as well.
I think that's great. And I know that a lot of times it'll be after work and I'm looking for a meal or something and trying to maybe prep something, look for different ingredients. And it's like hard for me to come up with different meal ideas. Is that something that you guys help out with now on your side?
Yeah, so that's definitely what we call from the innovation or R&D side. It's definitely one of the top sort of priorities and asks that we are constantly being asked from our users and any of the CS feedback. So we typically have a pool of all of the innovation ideas that we're looking to develop. And again, machine learning and AI is at the forefront of helping us move way faster and accelerate faster than we've ever imagined in the past 5 to 8 years.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm curious about the kind of business model overall because it sounds like there's a B2B side with kind of the clients that you support for maybe those large retail stores. And then there's also like a B2C side as well for like the end user experience. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we always say double-sided marketplace. So one exactly that to the consumers, and then the others are retailers and our brands as our customers.
Yeah, I think that's great. Do you ever work on the B2C side at all? And how does that kind of carry over? Because I don't talk to a lot of companies where it's, as you mentioned, like that double market. So, what's it like working within that setting and how do you interact with both sides?
For sure. Good question. So I'm predominantly focused on our teams are focused mostly on the B2B side. However, part of leveraging a lot of the data and insight is I think we need to do a better job at taking some of the B2C feedback and incorporating that into our B2B conversations because that is what our clients, our retailers and brands care about is
Right.
what do the consumers think? What are their shopping habits? And from a tactical frontline of our CX teams that's looking at the feedback. How do people interact with our app? We do a lot of user testing in terms of, okay, we have this new shopping list that we're implementing within our Flipp app. We have this design that maybe captures the eye of a user a little bit more. We're constantly testing that data. And we actually leverage that in our conversations with our retailers to say, hey, if we look at this investment, if we change your creative a little bit, that's actually going to generate more eyeballs. And so that is really the intersect between, I would say, the consumer side and then our retailer side is leveraging that content advisory data.
For sure. And I'm sure that AI probably helps to identify those user trends so you can relay those messages over to the B2B side, which is probably super helpful. And I guess just to continue on this conversation of AI, when you guys are evaluating like internal tools, is it mainly driven by time saved, just outcomes or goals, or something else entirely that you guys are looking at there when evaluating?
Yeah, I think time saved is definitely at the core of it, but I think there's a couple of other things that we use to evaluate. One, first and foremost, is really the strategic value, right? Does this tool do something that we just couldn't do before? Or is it just about making existing tasks faster? And so for us, it's not just about the time savings, it's around unlocking new capabilities like hyper personalization or predictive insights that fundamentally can change how we serve our customers. I would say key priority, quality and trust. I think accuracy, any bias risk. We trust what AI is outputting. Does it reflect our brand voice? And does it actually provide transparency to how decisions are being made? I'd say that second priority. And I'd say the last piece is around this element of human impact. I think that's often overlooked. We evaluate tools based on employee experience. Does it not only eliminate meaningful work, free up time, but is it allowing for more strategic contributions? Does it empower our team? So yeah, I think while time saved is important, alone it's not enough, and that's why we look at strategy, quality, and the human impact.
Definitely. And just from your personal perspective, out of all of the ones you listed, I think they're all very important. But to you, is there any that you mentioned, maybe hyper personalization, quality and trust, brand voice and transparency? Like out of those that you mentioned, what do you think is the most important? I guess as you guys are evaluating these, just because I know that all of them are important, but I know like quality and trust definitely on the customer side, if they're interacting with things, that's gonna be huge. I guess overall, though, what would you say is, like, most important?
Do you think it's quality and trust? Think especially as going back to this double-sided marketplace, we service a huge customer base, whether it's our retailers or brand or our shoppers. And if we lose that transparency and that trust, we're putting a pretty big risk on both sides of our platform. So
Right.
I'd probably say, yeah, quality and trust is at the top priority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. And I guess in your support instance, like your support workflow and how that team operates, is it very different, would you say? Because you have the platform side where you're kind of interacting with the clients, but then also on the customer side. I'm curious how the support works in that regard and how you guys are serving maybe the client side a little bit differently and then the customer side a little bit differently.
Yeah, great question. I think on the client side, one of the key pieces that we really strive for is a strategic, trusted advisor. And so there is more of a relationship building side of it. When I think about what one of the biggest changes for the customer success side in terms of servicing clients is that we actually embed our customer success team under this client solutions umbrella, under the sales umbrella, because we want to drive the maximum strategic impact. So that is a lot more around relationship building and working closely with the customer. I would say on the flip side, no pun intended, on the consumer side, it is currently more operational. And that is where you see a lot of the how do we look at repetition of tasks? How do we actually take all these trends together and package it up nicely? And so I think one is really around more of the operational support, making sure things aren't breaking, there's no bugs in our app, whereas the other is around, okay, we that is just baseline. How do we actually take on the next level of strategic impact and drive outcomes for our retailers and brands and think of things that they've never even thought of? That's the digital trusted advisors that we want to bring to our customers.
And I was just talking to a co-founder the other day who works on the B2C side, and she was mentioning how on the B2C side, maybe you can scale up the automations or AI chatbots a little bit more just because it's not necessarily client facing. And there's a lot more rules that can be set and parameters that you can set within your chatbots. Would you say that it's a little bit more automated or could be more automated on the B2C side versus needing to have that trust and build that relationship on the client side?
Yeah, from my vantage point, I think there's more opportunity to automate and operationalize the B2C side in comparison to the B2B side. I think from the B2B side, we should always striving to get to the automation, but I think it's too hard to replace this human interaction from a client side.
Definitely. In terms of escalations and your escalation process, how are you guys turning that into a customer trust building opportunity more than just a fire drill?
Yeah, I think it's really coming around leveraging escalations to and turning that into trust building moments. I was telling we all have to own the narrative, right? If something goes wrong, own the narrative, but try and reach out to the clients before they come knocking on our doors and saying, "Hey, what happened here? What do we do here?" Let's be proactive about it. I think it's around showing our work too. At the end of the day, our clients appreciate the visibility into how complex issues are being addressed and making sure that we're doing it very timely. And so it's around like involving them, making sure that we're actively communicating to our customers. And then the last piece is always closing the loop. So no matter how hard the challenge is, it's after it's resolved, let's go through a retrospective with our clients internally to make sure that we're preventing that from happening again.
Definitely. And in terms of building internal tooling, how are you guys doing that with workflows to evolve the customer experience and not just fill in short-term gaps?
Yeah, this is a very hot topic here all the time. I think it's always tempting to build quick fixes for immediate problems, but that is how tech debt and operational headaches continue to grow. So, in terms of how we take a longer term approach, I think it's always about designing for change. We want to build tools that are more modular and flexible so that they can evolve and adapt. So, we always say build for a platform first mentality. I think the second piece is really around how do we involve our frontline teams, so our CX teams early and often in helping to design these tools because they actually know the requirements. They know the edge cases more than anybody else in this organization. So whether the solution works or not, they should be the first at testing and learning. And then I think it's iterate, don't overbuild, test, learn, gather small feedback, continue to move fast so that we are learning from our mistakes faster and again, not growing tech debt. And then I think the last piece is really around how do you measure impact, right? Have to track how these tools are doing from a KPI. So whether it's like resolution time, customer satisfaction, escalation rates, that is actually going to give us the logical data for us to iterate and continue to build for long term.
Definitely. And I guess it's dependent on where you're at as maybe a startup company or a little bit more mature, building up that data and kind of making those informed decisions. Like, where do you draw the line where maybe you're getting a couple customer or client requests about a particular issue and actually making an informed decision to have it fall in the product roadmap or be prioritized. Like, instead of just plugging those holes, how many, like, from your side as a leader, where do you draw the line before it becomes something that you guys would actually start working on?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think this is where we work very closely with our product teams as well. I think it's this whole notion about progress over perfection. We're just not going to be able to survey every single customer, and so at some point, we have to trust some of the couple of customers that we always call either beta customers or pioneering partners. We have to leverage their data to make a decision. And secondly, I always say leverage our internal team. They actually know so much through the experience that they've built through the years. Instead of needing to go to every single customer and market, let's just take the data of a couple of the customers that we're pioneering with, and then our internal teams, our CX teams positioning, and that's how you make an informed decision. So I'd say I probably err more on the accelerate and moving faster. But again, to your point, it really just depends on what product, how big of a long-term impact this product is driving, or whether it's a short-term fix that we know we can probably move a lot faster.
And in terms of like cross-functional collaboration, I know that you mentioned like internal teams or the product team, they were just brought up, but in terms of like cross-functional collaboration in delivering great escalations, how do you make sure it's not just like a game of hot potato, and what teams are you leaning on most to make sure there's effective communication cross-functionally across teams?
Yeah, we always say the customer success and the client solutions really is the bridge or the super highway between all the different teams. So, really, the reliance is within this function to connect the dots between the external and the internal. But cross functional collaboration is really at the heart of what we do because no single team can own and should own the customer experience. Even when you have maybe 10 different teams working internally, you want to have that single point of contact for our internal and our clients because that is how we're going to avoid sending mixed messages, redundancy. And so I think it's around having clear tools, whether you're using Pace, Racy, whatever project management tool, having a very clear definition of communication ownership. That's important. I think, again, I talked a bit about this, but having co-creation sessions, shared war rooms, very important for any big escalations, debriefing, retrospectives. And I think this is one maybe we often forget, but it's around celebrating some of the wins together because that's going to continue to drive the cross collaboration and momentum between entire organization.
Definitely. And I guess like something that I'm interested about is obviously like on the customer success side, they're getting so much great information because they're on the front lines talking to customers. When it comes to a handoff, how do you facilitate those, or what do you think is the best way to facilitate those handoffs so information isn't lost? I think that's one of the biggest things that happens in organizations is they'll get all of this great feedback. They maybe need to work cross functionally to get something done or add it to the roadmap. And then information gets lost as they're maybe in a meeting or just there's no follow through on it. So, what's the best way to help from start to finish with that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say in a perfect world, all of this is automated and it's leveraged. We're leveraging platforms, AI to transcribe all the calls, put it together, have a nice themed message that gets back to our product team. They're filtering through it and prioritizing. But I think the reality, it's a bit of both. So this is actually one area that we're heavily relying on tools to help us note take, record sessions, summarize themes. Where I think the added layer comes in is having a central source. So this is really our, again, our client solutions team and our go-to-market teams coming together to summarize that data and actually think a little bit deeper around, like, okay, is every retailer asking for this or is it just this large customer? And then we're actually packaging that up through our different templates, very lightweight. That is how we send it back to our product teams to evaluate. But I think it's not perfect. We're constantly learning on how to do this better, and we're constantly trying to balance how much time do we spend on building this business case to actually just building and testing and learning. And so I think we're trying to find that balance between the two. But it is a mix of, I would say, human interaction and then leveraging the tools that we have to generate all these themes and feedback from our customers.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I guess right now, like in a world of note takers, for example, let's say the note taker joins the call. After the call, they work together as a team to identify the trend before they would push it over to the product team.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, especially when there's larger calls with some of our larger customers, that is when we'll have more emphasis on taking some of that feedback back.
Okay,
Mm.
awesome. And then just moving on to the last topic here, I know we're almost at time and wanted to get through these last few questions. How do you create a sense of momentum and belonging within the CX team that rarely shares a room? I know a lot of people are spread across time zones as people have been working remotely since COVID. So just curious how you keep that sense of urgency and momentum among the team.
Yeah, I think luckily up until now, we've predominantly been in North America. So we've had overlapping time zones. But recently we did acquire a company in Europe. Going global, I think this will likely change. But either way, yeah, I think momentum and belonging, they don't happen by accident, right? It's around how are we being intentional around connecting people to both their purpose and to each other. So for us, it's two things. I think we try to set very clear goals, and I've spoken about this before too. It's around like celebrating regularly and celebrating small wins. That is how you create this belonging so that teams feel like they're still tied together. And then I think it's around creating human connection in general. So for us, it's hosting either virtual sessions, bring in a lot of speakers, storytelling sessions, small rituals. A lot of our team members do this within their unique groups is what's the win of the week? What is the one thing we've learned from the week? And while in the beginning it's uncomfortable, it seems like it's a wasted time, I think that's actually built out a lot of habits that our teams are looking forward to these 15 minutes or 30 minutes each session. So just little ways that we try to bring the teams together still.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I guess in terms of hiring, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here because I had this kind of topic come up a few calls ago and wanted to bring it back up. Do you think it starts with also like the hiring process? And what do you think that looks like in terms of what you look for when you are hiring? A lot of times, customer success, especially, can get burned out. So, what do you look for in the hiring process to obviously, you can create that sense of momentum and belonging, but it also falls on the employee sometimes to have that in them. So what do you look for, like, in the hiring process to know, like, a key indicator that they'll be able to keep.
Yeah. So I absolutely do think it starts from hiring because, yeah, you want to bring in folks that really are part of this culture. I think for us, it's always the most subjective part of an interview, but we have different principles here at Flipp. But one of the key ones are the three H's: the hungry, humble, and highly intelligent. That's really what we look for. Does someone have those three criteria? We know they're going to do good work, they wanna continue to do good work. We always say the startup mentality, you're hungry, you wanna do more, and being humble. I think for me personally, that is very important because oh, no, I think I'm cutting out. Yeah, I was gonna say, and I think it's those folks who are humble, those are the folks that are gonna continue to wanna do more and be part of belonging.
Definitely. And then I guess in terms of like career development, this kind of falls in line with that topic as well. But what's your approach to career development and customer experience, especially for roles that are traditionally seen as a pipeline to leadership? I know that a lot of folks that I talk to maybe don't start out in customer success. They never thought that they would be here. And then now they're loving it and they're looking more towards a leadership role. In terms of career development, I guess, what advice would you give or what's your approach?
Yeah, I think advice and approach sum it down to really being adaptive. I think, especially in this world where there are so many tools, technology, there's so many different voices, being able to be agile and adapt is going to be one of the most critical skill sets, I think, for the upcoming years because we're just constantly going to be changing. And if we're just so stuck within the ways that either this is how we've done in things or this is how I used to do things, we're not going to be able to grow. So I'd say, yeah, my advice is continue to be agile, continue to adapt. And that's how you're going to have this growth mindset that you can take to any career, any job that
Yeah.
you're looking for.
I think that's great. And would you recommend looking for obviously internal opportunities for growth, but externally, is there any resources that you would maybe recommend for anybody in this space? Or do you think more so leaning towards the internal development?
Yeah, it's always both, right? I think internally, definitely lean on your peers, mentors, but externally, it's the same thing. I think being able to find connections through humans. So look
Yeah.
for the local spots, any of the professional networking events. Sometimes they are awkward to go to, sometimes they don't fit, but go try, go test out a few, because even if you build 1 to 2 connections in 5 sessions, I guarantee those are probably very high quality, and that's what's gonna continue to help you grow. So, yeah, networking and then continue to learn and continue to keep up to date with all the technology trends out there so that you're upskilling consistently.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's a lot of great opportunities out there. I think some people sometimes shy away from it, but I know that my CEO said in the past he hated networking events. And then the more he went to them, he really started to enjoy them and they really started to help. I 100% agree with that. Really appreciated you coming on today. I think we covered a lot of great topics and some things that the audience can really learn from. I think it was a great chat and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much again for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, Andrea.
Thank you, Sam. Bye.